Every single factor that is being done by a person is unique. Consumer continues to remain in that phase. He is not going to give up the factor at all. The slope of an indifference curve is negative, downward sloping from left to the right. I mean to say it will never touch. At the same time, they cannot intersect like this. This intersection is not possible. Good morning and welcome to the session 4 in Unit 4, Business Decision Theories, where we're going to talk about the properties of the indifference curve altogether. Now, when we talk about the properties of indifference curve, from the assumptions described above, the following properties of the indifference curves are going to be deduced. Now, we have seen about these properties of the indifference curves in the previous session, where we have spoken about the factors, the materials that we have been talking about. But then it becomes very, very important for all of us in order to understand this factor. Now, there are certain things in indifference curve which we need to understand in detail. Though we might have seen it in the form of cardinal and ordinal utility, but then this becomes a very important factor for all of us to understand. The first thing is that the higher indifference curve to the right or of the another represents the higher level of satisfaction. This is one thing where we have to understand it very clearly. Now, for example, when I draw this indifference curve, higher on the right hand side. So when you start seeing curves like this, moment you see this flow here, the curve 1, 2, 3 and 4. So by the time when you are reaching the fourth curve that's given here, it's a higher level of satisfaction. Why is that? For a consumer, he feels that higher and higher he goes towards his preferred product. The more and more he consumes the product what he likes, the satisfaction level also becomes higher. He also becomes highly satisfied about the factor that yes, it is working. I need to go with it. I need to work out with it. So that's where the satisfaction becomes really higher for him. So that's why the preferred combination is always spoken about. That's where you would try to understand in the indifference curve factor. When we talk about it, it is so important, it is so highly placed in such a manner that the satisfaction really matters for the consumer. Let me just explain you in a very simple manner. When you see the price of your favorite product, let us take it as mango or apple or banana or any of the fruit. Whenever you go to the market, you ask for the price of the product, though you like that product. That's because the basic rationality is always about the price. But when that person says that the cost of the product is higher than the previous week, but you don't want to give up on the product, you again want to go in for the same combination. Let's say that you like apple. From the previous week, the price of the apple have gone up by 10 rupees per kg. But still, you want to go because by paying a higher value, the satisfaction is also higher because you're combining yourself to that level. You're combining yourself to that mindset altogether. So that's where this becomes very, very important. That's where this becomes highly important in terms of understanding this matter. Now, what we are trying to say here is that the indifference curve, there can be a number of other indifference curve, one at every point of space in the diagram. So even in between the space, there might be one more like this. It is possible. That's what we try to say. What we are trying to prove here is that consumer continues to remain in that phase. He is not going to give up the factor at all. He is just going with the factor. He is just going with the mindset that yes, it is there and I will continue to take on higher levels up and up. So in between, there is a possibility there can be number of indifference curves. Higher, lower, smaller values, bigger values, it can keep on popping in, but the consumer is not going to give up on that because he is still feeling that the satisfaction levels have not yet reached. Now, once you reach the satisfaction level, will this indifference curve come to an end? Definitely not. Why? Because you will reach that level and you might get saturated. You don't want to come down again. So the most exciting part for a consumer behavior is this indifference curve. So whenever you go for shopping, whenever you go to purchase something, you can experience it by yourself, seeing that how the indifference curve is acting upon the consumer at any given point of time. Why? Because the consumer is getting completely convinced about the factor that higher the price, higher the satisfaction. We have seen it in economics, in the business decision theory factor. Demand is happening only when the price falls down. But then in this scenario, even though the price is going higher, the consumer is not going to give up. He feels that, yes, I will take it up one more time because I am getting satisfaction at this levels only. This is why most of the companies in the world always try to set their products with indifference curve. The base being the same, they try to bring in variation. Why? Because consumer has his mind stuck over the product over number of years. He's not going to give up so easily. So whatever variations you bring in that product, people still would like to go in. Now let's take an example here, Dettol itself. When Dettol soap first came into the market, people believed it to be an antiseptic soap and typically a medicated soap altogether. But the same Dettol wanted to reinvent and continued in the market by bringing in various variants. Now Dettol skin care or Dettol menthol base or Dettol will have a cool care, and then Dettol has got some other rose flavor or a jasmine flavor, whatever is that. But Dettol did not just give up on the market saying that I will just be remaining myself in that medicated space altogether. It wanted to create niche market for itself by continuously improving and continuously bringing in better varieties of product. Now, when Dettol came up with hand sanitizers, hand wash, and then it started slowly entering into the disinfectant in terms of, even in the cloth kind of thing, when you talk about the detergent space also, Dettol was trying to reinvent itself, but at the same time, the price of Dettol never came down. Dettol never went on the factor saying that buy two get one free. No, Dettol never wanted to do that. Rather, Dettol maintained its price and variety and kept on moving further. But in the mind of people were not ready to give up on Dettol. Whatever variants used to come, they were satisfied and they tried buying more and more, by which they climbed up the satisfaction curve altogether. So that's where we are talking about the property of the indifference curve. Moving further, now when I was talking about the indifference curve here, when I talk about I1, I2, I3 and I4. So let me take this as the first indifference, second one, third one and the fourth one. Any numbers can be given to the indifference curve because these are absolutely arbitrary in nature. What I mean by saying here is that they're absolutely randomized. You don't have to follow the same order, same method altogether. They are random in nature because the consumer goes on a random basis to pick up whatever he wants. He is not going to be a person who is going to stick for a very long time and listen to the same story again and again. He is going to find some clue. He is going to find some rationality in terms of picking up. Now, let me just tell you this factor. Why this comes into picture is that whenever you go for a shopping into a retail mart and when you buy the same kind of shopping in a wholesale mart altogether, there is a difference of mindset that comes into picture. People like to play with the price and quantity, so absolutely there is no rationality, there's no fixed way of formulating saying that this much is what the consumer should buy. The consumer can buy any amount of product, can go for any variety, any range. That's primarily because the numbers that are being given, that you can see the variation starting from 1 to n. That's where we are talking about this rationality. The next thing is the slope of an indifference curve is negative, downward sloping from left to the right. It means that the consumer to be indifferent to all the combinations on indifference curve and go for the good X or have more of the Y factor. So the slope, when I talk about the slope factor here, I would typically like to say this factor, it's a downward sloping curve, which means to say consumer is not bothered about the other combinations that are coming on the way. He is fixed. His mind is completely fixed about the factor that yes, I will go only for this range of products. I'm not going to change it. See, for example, when Dow came into the market, they understood the mindset very clearly. They said that Dow is going to be definitely a premium product, not like the other kind of soaps that were bought by Hindustan Lever. Dow wanted to retain a primary space. Dow wanted to retain a top-notch place in the minds of the people. Why? Because it wanted to have a niche feeling. It wanted people to get onto the mindset that any other combination or any other factor is not a substitute to Dow. Dow is Dow because they have their own variants. They have their own methodologies. But whenever you look into a Dow advertisement, whenever you look into their products, they have gone with the factor that the consumers who prefer Dow would not prefer any other products because they maintain that level. They maintain the identity. So any other combination cannot be taken into a substitute factor. So on a typical basis, what we need to understand here is that consumer is not ready to go in for substitutes. He might not agree to it at any point of time because consumer is fixed over a particular product. He might go A over B. That means to say, instead of taking 10, he might take 7 and the other product he might take 3. But at the end of the day, he's not changing his options. He's playing with the same option. The number might vary, but he's not going to change the product completely. So that's why I say the property of indifference curve when we talk about this slope factor. Now, the next thing is that indifference curves can neither touch or intersect each other. This is a very, very important factor. Let me just draw it here. I mean to say it will never touch. At the same time, they cannot intersect like this. This intersection is not possible. Why? Because when the curve passes through only one point on the indifference map. Now, everything is unique. That's the word that you need to understand here very clearly. Every single factor that is being done by a person is unique. It has to be unique and it has to be maintaining the same factor all throughout. So that is where this product, this factor becomes even more important for us to understand and take it forward. Why do I say this? Because let's try to understand this factor here. Indifference curve can neither touch. That doesn't mean that the customer satisfaction has ended, because if you're going to touch to a particular point and you're going to say that this is the end, then you're just going to put two fixed points altogether. But this is not the case. His level of satisfaction might come down or might go up, but at the same time, he's not going to come down to a zero. He's not going to give up on the product. So that's where it's not going to touch any of the lines. Then the second thing is that no two people are same, no two combinations are same. They are unique. People might like the same kind of product, but the way they like, the variations will be there. So we are not going to accept on the factor that yes, they are same. So you cannot see a commonality again coming back into picture at any given point of time on the indifference map. There's only one point where it just starts sloping downwards. The next thing is that it will not touch either axis and they are convex to the origin. They're always convex. You cannot get a graph like this back again. That is not accepted at all in the indifference curve. So this happens to be something which keeps on going again and again in terms of the indifference analysis. With this, I come to the end of this particular session. I hope and believe that all the information that has been shared through this particular session would be of a great help and resource to you. In the upcoming session, we shall talk more about the different factors of the business decision theory. But until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me today on this wonderful session.